Yes, I will do that. Okay, so let's talk about the rest of aviation history. So does anybody remember when the final exam was scheduled for as printed in black ink on the syllabus that I passed out the first week of school? Nobody remembers except me? Or, no, don't pass it back, sorry. 12. 12? What's today? 9. 12 minus 9 is how many days from now? 3, yeah, so the final exam is this Thursday. So I'm going to say that again, because I have this feeling everybody's not paying attention. Yeah. Thursday, the final exam's Thursday. Does anybody remember any details from last week about what's... You have 35 minutes to take it. Yeah, that's true. There's 20 questions, and what are you going to have sitting in front of you? Notes. Yeah, just to be clear, no electronic devices. Question? Yes. Just history. No private pilot stuff. It's just history. 20 questions. Aviation history. It's open note. So if you took really good notes all semester, it won't be too tough. But you only get 30 minutes. So you need to bring your notes in order. Literally, I'll say like 01, early aviation. Ask a couple of questions out of that chapter. And then it'll say 02, the Wright brothers. And I'll ask a couple of questions out of that chapter. And then it'll say 03, the decade before World War I. And I'll have a couple of questions. And it'll say 04, World War I. So it'll be really easy, rephrase that, if you have good notes and you put them in order and you bring them with you on Thursday. So what's the downside of coming to class on Thursday without your aviation history notes? You're still going to take the test. It's just that you won't be able to look any answers up because, no, you don't get to use anybody else's notes. Any questions about the final exam on Thursday? Okay. So there's only one more. There's to answer somebody's question. There are no more essays in history. We've done 3. I threw out the lowest essay draft. I threw out the lowest essay, and I threw out the lowest research score for each person in class. Let's see. So all we have left is I need to grade that quiz we just took a correction. Record that quiz. We're going to have a quiz on Chapter 10. We're starting Chapter 10. It's the last. So there's one more quiz left. Well, we'll probably have the quiz on Tuesday or Wednesday. If I get done tomorrow, then we'll have the quiz. Let's put it this way. We're going to have the quiz. We'll get done tomorrow, and we'll have the quiz on Wednesday. And then, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And I'll figure out what we're going to do Wednesday. I mean, we'll have the quiz on Wednesday. So we'll finish with this chapter tomorrow. That's my current plan. Well, we could just have a quiz at the end of the day on Wednesday. Maybe we'll do that. You know what? That's what we're going to do. We're going to have a quiz. So we're going to take the quiz unusually. We're going to take the quiz at the end of the hour on Wednesday. Any questions about that? Who cannot tell me when quiz number 10 is? Raise your hand. Okay. So if you want to take notes on what I passed out, you're welcome to do that. You'll probably, if you do that, you'll probably want to figure out how you're going to integrate it into all of your other notes for the final exam. So yes, so Friday this week is the last day of aviation history. Of course, it's a Friday, so we're not going to have lecture. On Monday the 17th, we're going to start aviation careers. And we're going to talk about careers like being an airport bathroom custodian and the airport landscaper and the the airport street and parking lot sweeping truck that drives around the parking lot and cleans up. So there's an airport street sweeping job. So those are the kind of jobs we're going to look at in aviation careers. Oh, wait, no, I forgot. There's the airport restaurant dishwasher. That's a career. That's an aviation career, is airport restaurant dishwasher. Let's see, I'm trying to think of any other good airport careers that we could cover. Everyone's personal favorite is the airport sewage treatment plant operator. Has anybody ever been to a sewage treatment plant at the airport? Oh, they got people there. They wear gloves and hazardous materials masks. They put cotton with Vaseline in their nose. Well, I don't know. Maybe they don't put Vaseline on it. Surely they don't put Vaseline on it. All right, so first thing in Chapter 10, we're going to talk about modern military advancements. All right, modern military advancements. So, MIRV. This one is awesome, so you might want to underline MIRV. MRV stands for Multiple Reentry Vehicles, and it's talking about an intercontinental ballistic missile or submarine-launched ballistic missile, and at the top of the rocket, there's not just one nuclear warhead. There's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. In fact, the latest nuclear missile that the United States has 10 MIRVs on it. How do I know? I saw it on the internet. The government's doing it. Check out this picture. Now you got to understand, these triangles here are about 10 feet tall here. Yeah, think of it. The diameter of this circle is like 15 or 20 feet. This is what gets mounted on the top of a big old honking rocket. So if somebody stood up there next to it, the cone would be about twice as tall as they are. So each one of these is a nuclear bomb, and you put this on top of the missile, and then when it gets over enemy territory, they all separate, and they go hit their own target. Cool. One missile, 10 targets. Talk about killing 2 birds with 1 stone. This is nuke 10 places with 1 missile. Can you shoot them down? It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult because they're going thousands and thousands of not of miles an hour. Like when they a whole mess of them. Yeah, you're probably going to shoot down 10%. Yeah, this is another set of this is bad juju. This is bad magic. This is bad magic. I mean, unless you want to, there's almost nothing. Yeah, if another country launched one of these, we would not shoot all of them down. No. Well, you might be able to shoot the whole missile down. That's a lot easier because it's bigger. The problem is when it's the whole missile, it's up in space, and it's up at 500,000 feet. And we don't have missiles that'll go to 500,000 feet that I know of. No, not even. What you ought to do, if you're interested, go research THAAD, T-H-A-D. I can't remember what T-H-A-D is, but it's a U.S. anti-ICBM system, and we put some in South Korea and in Japan. I think we sold some to Japan a long time ago, not just recently. T-H-A-D. And those are systems. So see if you can find out how low does that missile have to come back down before that you can launch that and blow it up. Of course, then all this nuclear radioactive dust will settle down on top of you. So you want to breathe it in really heavy. Oh, yeah, the nuclear destruction inside my lungs. That'll be great. All right, so let's talk about solid fuel. The first ICBMs in the United States, the first intercontinental ballistic missiles, had oxygen and fuel, and they were liquid. And so it's very difficult to keep that rocket sitting there on alert, because every 2 or 3, 4, or 5 days, you're going to have to top it off, because a little comes out all the time. If you ever on old missile launches, you can see it looks like steam coming out of the side of the missile. Now that's liquid oxygen burning off because it's getting too high of a pressure, so they got a little bit off. But let's think about having one of these rockets under the ground. So what's way better than that is to come with a solid fuel rocket. If you look at the space shuttle, we looked at the space shuttle 2 months ago when we were talking about the Hindenburg, and the two have the bright yellow. Those are solid rockets. We're actually going to shoot off. really trick, specialized powder. But it's got the oxygen and it's got the fuel in it, and it's all mixed together. So it can just sit there, and it doesn't, no steam, no oxygen comes off. So man, with solid rockets, that's trick. So now you can sit it under the ground, and it's very, very low maintenance. And it's way less expensive in the long run. So that means you can afford to buy more of them. Just MX, that's it, I couldn't remember. The MX missile, if you're interested in MIRVs in the United States, type in MX missile system in the United States. They got 10 MIRVs. Okay. So here's an early Polaris. This is a solid rocket booster. This one was designed to put inside of a submarine. Nice bright yellow flame. One of my personal favorites is vertical takeoff and landing fighter jets. I think I have a picture. So here's a Harrier Jump Jet. This was actually designed and originally built in Great Britain, and at the moment it is, I can't remember which country or which company designed it, but the United States, a company in the United States got a license to build them in the United States, and the United States Marine Corps flies these. And these are really awesome machines because they literally, the front part of the engine, it blows air down, and in the back part of the engine, it blows air down. And so it doesn't need rotor blades like a helicopter, but it will lift up straight like a helicopter. It can go forward, backwards, left, and right. And now it doesn't need much of a runway. It just needs a place to land. Now the downside is you can't load it completely full of all the fuel and all the bombs and all the rockets that it could hold if you have to launch straight up and down. But if you can get like a 300 or 400 foot long runway, now you can really load this thing up. So what the United States Navy has done, you notice this is actually next to the ocean. This is taken off of an aircraft carrier, but this is taking off out of a small aircraft carrier that doesn't have those big giant catapults that accelerate the airplane for takeoff, and it doesn't have the wires that trap or catch the airplane and slow it down. This aircraft carrier, and then these things go out and shoot the bad guys on the shore, and then the Marines get on their hovercraft and go out and take over the land, and then the helicopters resupply them. So you don't need a big giant aircraft carrier. It's much less complicated. And look, these big giant things on the left and the right, those are fuel tanks. But you could take those off and put guns, machine guns, and missiles, and bombs. Yeah, oh, sorry. So here's a picture of the F35. The F-35 is actually gone into production. The Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines are all getting different versions of this. And this is the Marine version. And you'll notice in the back of the airplane, the exhaust pipe is pointed straight down. And it's hard to tell, but in the front of the airplane, it looks like there's a couple of doors opening upward right behind the canopy, right behind the plexiglass where the pilot sits. That is a fan that is spun around by the engine to blow air down. So the exhaust coming out of the back and this fan blowing air in the front, that lifts this aircraft up. So it's just like a Harrier Jump Jet, except for a couple of things. One is it's about 30 or 40 years newer, and it'll carry more bombs and more fuel and more machine guns and more missiles. And when you close all this stuff up, it's very stealthy. That is, the base on the shape of it, it doesn't reflect radar very much. And this one will go supersonic. The Harrier Jump Jet won't go supersonic, Brian. This one, the F-35 is bigger. Oh, the F-22 is bigger. F-22 is like this with two engines. The F-22 is bigger. But the F-22, only operated by the Air Force, needs a big long runway. But now you can carry lots of gas and a lot of missiles and a lot of bullets. And the F-22 will do what's called super cruise. You get it up past supersonic and you can turn off the afterburner. So it gets reasonably good gas mileage, even though you're going 1.5 times the speed of sound. Most other airplanes before the F-22, if you went to supersonic, you could only do it for about 10 minutes, then you'd run out of gas. Maybe 15 minutes. In the F-22, you can fly for an hour. Woohoo! So you can get to where the bad guys are, shoot them out of the sky, and then turn around, land, and then have a barbecue. Because that's what the Air Force does. So that's one of your side duties if you're an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force. while the airplanes are gone and the officers are all gone attacking and getting shot at, you stay back at the air base and you have a barbecue. You just try to save a couple of bratwurst for the pilots so they won't complain too much. So there's actually a better picture of the F-22. You can see the blue arrows where the thrust is going to come down. Yeah, I don't really like that picture. The fan is in the fuselage right behind the pilot. Have they tried to put the fans in the wings before? Yes. If you go online and type in vertical takeoff and landing airplane, there's been probably 10 or 20 different designs that have flown, but they've just built one or two. And they go, yeah, this will work, but it'll either be too expensive, too complicated, or it'll break too often. Of course, here, what's going to happen if the engine quits and you're in a hover? The ship's going to fall down, but the pilot will use his or her ejection to escape. Stealth technology. Stealth effectively means that it cannot be easily picked up by radar. So when you're trying to fly into enemy territory and they shoot their radar at you, it won't bounce off of you, or it'll bounce off and go somewhere else. Because radar, to work, it has to bounce off of your airplane and bounce right back to where it got transmitted. It has to bounce straight back. So if it hits your airplane and bounces and goes straight up, then they don't see you. Another way that stealth works is they coat the surface of the airplane with a kind of a paint that absorbs the radar, so not very much of it bounces back. So there's two ways to be stealthy and not have radar pick you up. Is one, have a shape that the radar doesn't bounce back to where the radar came from, and two, put something on the airplane that absorbs the radar. Question, Brian? The SR-71 had both, but the paint was a very minor amount, and it got picked up on radar. It was literally early '60s technology. But the thing that saved that SR-71, and if I remember correctly, was ever shot down because the missiles couldn't go that high and that fast, because this is on unclassified sources. Do you think that during the Cold War that there were spies in the United States from the Soviet Union and were trying to figure out where our surface-to-air missiles were? Surely there were. Okay. Do you think there were U.S. citizens in the Soviet Union trying to figure out where their missiles, the missiles that would go up and shoot down enemy aircraft, surface-to-air missiles? I would guess. There's a really great TV series on Netflix. I think it's on the Lifetime. I can't remember. It's on one of the cable channels. And it's called The American. And it's the story of a married couple who are Soviet spies from the Soviet Union. And they're about 35 or 40 years old, and they've been in the United States for 20 years. But they speak English, have jobs, and they got smuggled in. And they have kids. Yeah, one of their kids is 16 or 17. And they're one of the things they try to do is get military secrets and then send it back to the Soviet Union. Now, it's a TV show. To be really clear, it's a TV show. But I bet money that the United States, I don't know what the United States was doing in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, but I bet you we did a lot of different things to find out what we thought the bad guys were doing. All right, so stealth. So here's a picture. The very first stealth aircraft was the F-117. And you don't have to write that down, but this came out in the 1980s. They were flying these out of what's now called Area 51. Anybody ever heard of Area 51? Or Groom Lake? It's just an Air Force base that the U.S. military won't talk to you about. You ask them about it, they just turn around and walk away. Or they'll say it doesn't exist. They don't want to say anything about it. But the F-117 was actually operating in the mid-1980s, and one of these outside of Bakersfield in the Tehachapi Mountains in Kern County, of course, lied about what it was. So nobody would know that the Air Force had a secret airplane, that nobody knew about it. And we only flew them at night, so nobody could see them. I mean, it'd turn on its lights flying around the United States, but you couldn't, unless you were near the airport it was taking off and landing from, all you do is look up and see some lights. But it was awesome. In 1991, let's think about 91, not when the country of Iraq was invaded and taken over by the United States, which was about a decade later, but go a decade earlier to 1991, and then Kuwait was being invaded by the Iraqi army, so the United States, this was George Bush Sr., not George Bush Jr., George Bush Sr. had the U.S. military go in there and push back, and for 30 days we fought war and pushed the army of Iraq back halfway from the border, halfway to Baghdad. And one of the things that the United States did was we flew F-117s into Iraq by themselves. It's funny, they call them F-117s for fighters, but they're not fighters. They don't have air-to-air missiles. All they do is have a bomb bay door that opens. Special guy talking who's in the Air Force, he said we called it an F-117 because we were afraid if we called it a B-117, none of the pilots would volunteer for it. And they wanted fighter pilots. They wanted people that were used to flying by themselves, which are fighter pilots, because bomber pilots always have a co-pilot and a navigator. So that's how they recruited pilots, calling it a secret fighter. But they interviewed people. You know, I'm sure they weren't saying anything unclassified, but they're just flying along and they see missiles go up, and because it's not that it doesn't reflect anything, but radar can't lock onto it. I don't know how many. I've never looked up to see how many the United States has. Is there 59 of them? It wouldn't surprise me. But I got to tell you, though, this is mid-1980s, mid-90s, zeros, tens. This airplane has been operating for 30 years. You think the Air Force has not funded a better version of it? I will see you all tomorrow.